Inside the club were approximately 22 individuals.
As many people are doing their part to stay home and stay safe during this global pandemic, another person has been charged for operating an illegal nightclub, this time in Surrey. Just ahead, how many people were ticketed when the RCMP busted their party in the early hours of the morning?
As of February 15th, when you return to Canada through a land border, you'll need to show a 72-hour PCR test, just like for air travel.
People entering Canada by the land border will soon be held to the same standard as those arriving by air and could face big fines if they don't have the required COVID tests.
This is what the set breakfast we pay for is like in hotel quarantine today.
From Canada to Australia during a pandemic. What is it like to fly around the world and isolate for 2 weeks? We catch up with a familiar Vancouver face who is now hunkered down in hotel quarantine.
Surrey RCMP say it was around here at 106th Avenue and King George Boulevard where police busted a party around 1 a.m. on Sunday. There were tables, couches, chairs, and alcohol service. It's the latest illegal nightclub in Metro Vancouver to get shut down, and partygoers and the host are facing consequences.
Inside the club were approximately 22 individuals, and those individuals were issued 26 violation tickets, and these tickets were each for $230 for attending a non-compliant event, for belligerent behavior, as well as not wearing any face covering. The host of the nightclub, this time he was not issued a violation ticket for $2,300. Instead, he was issued an appearance notice to attend court.
RCMP say individuals associated with the illegal after-hours nightclub have been fined on 3 prior occasions. It was on early Sunday morning when the RCMP COVID-19 compliance and enforcement team returned with a search warrant, and they met the party host again.
So alcohol was being sold on the premises. This was a location that was operating as a nightclub. This individual clearly disregarded not only the public health orders, but the directions of the officers.
Now, I talked to some business owners that didn't want to be on camera, and they said they hadn't heard anything about this illegal nightclub. As for where the actual nightclub is, it's supposed to be in a unit that isn't made for any formal business use or anything like that. And the only one that I could see myself that seemed to match that description, according to police, is this building that has the windows all papered up. It's unmarked, seemingly without any real function. I followed a drywaller into the unit, and it was pretty empty at this point. No couches or tables, as reported by police. I couldn't confirm if the drywaller really knew anything about the nightclub.
What I can tell you is that this individual is the host. They are the person who organizes this nightclub, and they're the same individual that was previously issued violation tickets on 3 previous occasions for hosting non-compliant events.
This comes after another high-profile party bust in downtown Vancouver late last month. Police found an illegal nightclub inside a penthouse at the Telus Gardens on Richard Street near West Georgia. 42-year-old Mohammed Movasagi is due in court February 22nd. Meanwhile, in Surrey, RCMP also stopped a wedding in a private room in a restaurant around 71st Avenue and 138th Street on Saturday. Officers saw at least 20 people in attendance. The restaurant owner cooperated but got slapped with a $2,300 ticket. The wedding guests were not fined.
Now, that could be because there were efforts made for social distancing and masks.
In Surrey, Kirjunos, City News.
As of next Monday, people who show up at a Canadian land border on non-essential travel will be expected, like returning snowbirds, will be expected to show a negative PCR test from the previous 72 hours.
People entering Canada through the land border will soon need to show proof they've tested COVID negative. This comes 1 month after the same measure was introduced at airports. But the Prime Minister notes that while border officers can stop someone from flying in, they can't stop Canadians from returning by land.
You can prevent someone from boarding a flight in Miami or elsewhere. You can't prevent someone who's standing at a land border crossing from entering Canada because technically they're already on Canadian soil when they're speaking to that customs officer.
However, travelers who enter without that PCR test will be hit with a hefty fine, up to $3,000. Public Safety Minister Bill Blair handles border security, and he clarified that those same tests will also be required for snowbirds who sailed south and are hoping to return by boat.
The measures that we're putting in place will include all entries at land, rail, and marine. So people entering for water by water will also be required. It's not that big of an issue, quite frankly, at the present time, because most of that's frozen over.
This is the latest in Canada's effort to close borders to COVID-19. The land border has been closed to non-essential travel since last year, and mandatory quarantines are needed for air passengers returning from non-essential travel abroad. However, don't expect vaccines to make border crossings any easier. Even travelers who can prove they've been vaccinated will still need that PCR test.
There is, unfortunately, insufficient data to support the determination of relying solely on a previous vaccination at the time, and so we will require those individuals who have been vaccinated also to submit the results of a negative test taken within 72 hours of their arrival at the border.
Now, Dr. Theresa Tam spoke to that point last week, noting that the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine has an efficacy rate of over 90%, but there is no way to tell if somebody is part of that percentage for whom the vaccine didn't work. While that figure of over 90% is good enough for herd immunity, it's not good enough for border security. In Ottawa, Shally Lee, City News.
There are 435 new cases of COVID-19 across the province tonight, and 4 more people have died in the last 24 hours. More than half of the new cases are in the Fraser Health region. 241 people are in hospital. That's up slightly from yesterday, but there are fewer people in intensive care, just under 24 people. Just over 155,000 doses of the vaccine have been administered in BC. Assault charges are being considered after a 36-year-old man apparently spat in the face of a convenience store worker in downtown Vancouver. It happened yesterday at a store near Dunsmuir and Seymour Streets. Police say the employee asked the man to wear a mask. He didn't and spat instead. The two got into a fight and the offender eventually drove off but was tracked down by police. Not wearing a mask can lead to a $230 fine. Rapid COVID-19 screening tests are now available for UBC students and staff who live and work in first-year residences. The tests will use nasal swabs, which produce results in less than half an hour. Until now, the closest testing site to campus was an urgent primary care center in downtown Vancouver. The school's alma mater society says they're happy with the development and hope to see it expanded in the months to come.
We've had a lot of conversations with university administrators, and I think, the next obvious step before we get into anything that looks like normal would be to expand rapid testing to more than just the first-year community on campus. And, there are a lot of other students who reside on campus, like upper-year students, faculty, staff who still come into work every so often. So that would be probably the next, phase of it, if you will, that we talked to the university about. But otherwise, I think that, right now, the hardest thing, for us as a student society, and also I would assume for the administration, is just predicting what things are going to look like, especially in the fall, but also as we come up to the summer here.
In a written statement, the university says it's a voluntary initiative that will evaluate the use of rapid tests, but more importantly, will help make first-year residents safer by identifying positive cases and interrupting possible chains of transmission. The tests are already available and are expected to be used until at least April 8th. WorkSafe BC is investigating after a car somehow fell down a freight elevator shaft at a car dealership in Vancouver this morning. It happened at the Audi dealership on West 3rd Avenue near First Street just before noon. Investigators say the car somehow came off the elevator platform and got lodged partway down the shaft. A technical team was brought in to stabilize the vehicle. It was cut open and the man was rescued. He's an employee at the dealership and was taken to the hospital to get checked out, but thankfully he's going to be okay.
You possess that unique thing that very few people have, and that's called wisdom.
A prominent Vancouver activist and artist has passed away, but friends and family say her passion for creativity and climate justice will live on. Just ahead, the legacy Marta Robertson Smythe is leaving on the Lower Mainland.
A new street in Vancouver could be named after a key figure in the city's Hogan's Alley community. Tomorrow, City Council will consider a proposal to name one of the new streets around the new St. Paul's Hospital development after Nora Hendricks. The street runs north from National Avenue between Gore and Thornton, and it would be named Nora Hendricks Way in her honor. Besides being the grandmother of rock guitarist Jimi Hendrix, she helped start the first black church in Strathcona. Nora Hendricks died in 1984 at the age of 100.
Without words, she was able to convey the importance of animals and children.
Many people in Vancouver's art and climate justice communities will remember Marta Robertson Smythe. And if not, you might recognize her salmon and sea creature artwork and other signs that appeared at numerous climate change protests across the Lower Mainland over the years.
It made tremendous waves in the movement that she spoke through her art.
Robertson Smythe passed away at the very end of 2020 after a battle with cancer. She was 73. Her family tells City News she grew up on the East Coast and eventually made her way to British Columbia.
Aunt Marta was always in like a state of artistic expression, but it wasn't in one of those annoying ways where, you know, you have someone explaining their aesthetic and their raison d'etre. No, she just showed up and you realize, wow, there's so much about this person. But the first thing that she talked about was, tell me about you.
During her time in Vancouver, she had an art studio, worked as an art teacher at Arts Umbrella, dedicated her free time advocating for climate justice, and picked up a variety of other hobbies.
She had an amazing passion for art and for animals, and kids related to that. I think she knew the importance of bringing art to children, and it was a way for her to teach how everything in the world is interconnected.
She was always on to something new. It was exciting to have a friendship with someone like this. And she possessed that unique thing that very few people have, and that's called wisdom.
Friends and family say Robertson Smythe was so dedicated to climate justice that she was even arrested here at Burnaby Mountain while opposing the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion.
At that time, there was hundreds of people being arrested. It was like an ongoing campaign of civil disobedience.
Her and her art pushed you just to the point of being like uncomfortable with what the truth actually would mean, and then she'd let you sit with it.
Robertson Smythe's loved ones say she was passionate about her artwork and climate justice projects up until her very last days.
She was working on art and protest art and banners literally until she was physically unable to.
And while Robertson Smythe is no longer here, her artwork and legacy will live on, both in people's hearts and in public spaces.
Her impact will be far-reaching, and it'll last forever.
What she did for love. You know, this really broad concept of what love is.
In Burnaby, Miranda Fatour, City News.
From secret food fairies to daily calls with a nurse. Moving during a global pandemic has its challenges, and now a former Vancouverite is sharing what it's like in a hotel quarantine.
Here's the full offering lined up together. We also get a dual option menu for the days to come.
Ben Murphy is a familiar face and voice to many people in Metro Vancouver. He was the former media liaison for TransLink, but now he's hopped aboard a major trip of his own and moved back to Australia with his wife. Step one was getting there. After they provided proof of a negative COVID test, the pair hopped on a mostly empty plane. Once they arrived and disembarked, they checked in at a hotel in Sydney, and members of the military escorted them to their room.
Where we are now, and this is it for 2 weeks. We can't open the door except to get groceries if we get them delivered, or the meals. We get 3 meals a day, which I've made a few videos about.
The sausages were okay, but my face kind of tells the story about the quiche.
One of the first things that shocked Murphy was the price tag. 2 people in hotel isolation with provided food for 2 weeks comes at a cost of $4,000 for the pair. He says there are payment plan options available to help manage the cost, and also daily phone calls with a nurse.
Seeing how we're doing in terms of mental health as well as physical COVID symptoms. So if you do start to get depressed, or people start to feel trapped, because you're in a pretty confined space for 2 weeks. There's no fresh air. The windows don't open. So for some people that can be a bit overwhelming.
You're also allowed to purchase extra food and drink through a provided menu or meal delivery services. Alcohol is limited to a 6-pack of beer or 1 bottle of wine per person per day. Because being stuck in one room for 14 days can get pretty boring, the hotel offers various activities.
All these sorts of odd little contests and competitions we haven't entered yet, but you can be the quarantine queen or COVID king if you dress up using objects in the room.
With Valentine's Day coming up, Murphy recently received a flyer with an offer to buy a pamper pack, which includes, among other things, wine, chocolate, and even a bath bomb. Although things have gone reasonably well so far for the couple, there's one thing missing: their pets.
Fortunately, commercial airlines aren't carrying animals at this time, so this company has had to charter, I believe it's an Air Canada flight or a flight, and it's just going to comprise of pets.
Dubbed the Noah's Ark flight, Murphy hopes they will be reunited with their fur family early next month. For now, he's midway through his isolation with his wife and plans to continue making videos about the experience to keep himself busy. Ashley Burr, City News.